I'm Father Robert Wojtek, Redemptorist missionary, and today I'd like to look at the readings for the 23rd Sunday of Ordinary Time with you. So, first of all, the readings talk to us about fraternal correction. It's an idea that has a twofold emphasis. First of all, fraternal correction is a responsibility that we have as Christians. Secondly, fraternal correction is an act of love. If you remember, in the first book of the Bible, Genesis chapter 4, verse 9, after Cain has killed his brother Abel, God asks Cain, "Where is your brother?" Cain says, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" We know that we are our brother's keeper. We are to help each other to grow in our love of God. So in the first reading today, the prophet Ezekiel is called to be a watchman. And part of that job of being a watchman is to preach the word of God to the people and to speak to the wicked to try to dissuade them. God tells Ezekiel, if he does not speak to the wicked to dissuade him, then the wicked, first of all, will die in his guilt, but the prophet himself will also be responsible, because he did not do his job. He did not speak to the wicked one to try to dissuade him. However, God also tells Ezekiel, if you do speak to him and then he refuses, well then the wicked, yes, will die in his guilt, but you at least will be saved, because you at least did your job. You spoke. And he refused. So Ezekiel, in a sense, as that watchman, is called to fraternal correction, to be responsible for his brother and to do it as an act of love. In the gospel, we hear Jesus, who gives 3 ways to fraternal correction. 3 approaches. The first is, if someone has gone astray, we're to have a one-on-one moment with them, an encounter to one-on-one sit down and confront the issue. If that works, great. If it doesn't, then the second part is that we bring someone else in as a witness, someone else who can support us to speak to the person, to confront the issue. If that works, fine. If it doesn't, then we bring it to the community. It's a wider audience, and that's where the issue, the person, is addressed. So often, I think we jump the gun and we try to either avoid confrontation or just figure we'll speak about the person or the issue behind their back somehow, and to get into gossip, and ultimately it lets that situation continue. It propagates the whole thing instead of confronting it. But Jesus gives us a gospel way of confronting, a gospel way of addressing fraternal correction. First, one-on-one, secondly, with another person, and then bringing it ultimately to the community. In the second reading today, reading from Paul to the Romans, we hear that all of the commandments are summed up as Paul quotes Jesus and says, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. And so, in terms of fraternal correction, we see it both as a responsibility that we have to our brothers and sisters, but also as an act of love that we try to help them to grow in their following of the commandments. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And so as we conclude this reflection, perhaps we can look at how we, in our own lives, address the question of fraternal correction. Do we, first of all, address it? And if we do, how? Hopefully it's not going around behind people's backs or getting into gossip or whatever, but that we do it according to the gospel ways that Jesus presents. One-on-one, then with someone else, and finally bringing it to a community if nothing else has worked. May God bless us.